Hi, welcome to Just for Today. I'm Jamal Normie,
Hey, I'm Miranda. I'm the addict.
and today we're going to talk about surrender.
Surrender.
So, by definition, surrendering means to cease resistance to an opponent and submit to their authority. There's so many ways you can take that. Romans 12:2 states, "Do not be conformed by this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind."
Transforming the mind.
Transforming the mind.
That's a big step in recovery, period. You definitely have to renew your mind, renew your thinking, rewire everything that's going on in your brain. You have to learn to think again. I know surrendering, to me, I didn't know I was surrendering when this happened, but I remember, the beginning stages of my recovery, learning to surrender. I didn't know I was surrendering. It was in the midst of everything falling apart and me hitting my rock bottom. I went to the doctor, to try and get help, and basically was told, well, you need to go to the hospital. Like that's how bad I was. Not just any hospital, but like a mental hospital, a psychiatric ward. So I remember it was raining. I just felt the world just crashing down on me, and I couldn't believe, here I am, my life. I have to go and check myself into a psychiatric ward. I remember driving my car. I went to the parking lot, and reality just hit. I just started screaming and crying, and at that point, that's when I was giving it up. I knew I no longer had power over my choices. I no longer were in control of what was going on inside of me. I knew I personally, just by myself, wasn't able to do this by myself. I remember, if I could have kicked, I would have been kicking, but I was kicking and screaming, just asking for help. And at that time, I didn't know who I was asking for help. I just knew I couldn't do it on my own. I was begging and pleading and crying, just asking for help. And going into my first NA meetings, that's what they would talking about surrender. And I remember going to Jamal, like, what do they mean, surrender? It was hard for me to grasp onto these simple terms, but that's when I realized that's what surrender was. Surrendering meaning, I can no longer be in control of it, and admitting that someone above me had to help me.
Yeah, and let's even think about that surrendering. Like for me, and even, well, first of all, when we got into this relationship, I didn't even know that she was on drugs. Some friends told me, brought up to me, oh, but she's on drugs, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, not Miranda. That doesn't make any sense. And then I called her after, and she was like, that silence, she knew. Giving it to God, again, like our other video, surrendering, I can't handle this by myself. I've never dealt with anything remotely like this. So I had to surrender to the situation. I had to surrender to God to, help me through this,
Basically, all the things that I was going through, because once I surrendered and realized, okay, I need help, and I started the process of getting help and getting fixed, all of these unexpected things started happening. All of feelings and emotions and drama came about. And, poor Jamal, how, he tried his best. He did, he tried to handle me. He tried to comfort me and, tough love, whatever it was. But his surrender was out of, a couple months went by, and that's when he introduced me to church, because he knew it was out of his hands. That's when I believe you surrendered, because he knew it was out of his hands, and he needed help, outside help. He knew that he couldn't handle me on his own. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, it is weird to think back about, because I was raised in church, so you always kind of have this noise in the back of your head, the Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder telling you to do this and that, and then I instantly knew we got to go to church. Like, I cannot do this on my own. Surrendering means that you're changing the way you think. You're not stuck in your ways. You have a renewal of how your perspective is on things. So many times, I think the big thing with, it's not even just drugs. It can be anything. There's meetings for alcohol, there's meetings for sex, there's meetings for food. There's all sorts of ways you can get addicted to things. And
also surrendering, you have to accept what you cannot change. And it was hard for me to grasp onto that, because again, control is a big factor in my life, and those with addiction, we just want to control the whole situation. It was hard for me to grasp that things in the past or even in the future, I had to come to acceptance that I can't change that. I can't change the past things that have hurt him that I've done. I can't change what I've done in the past that have affected my family. So you have to accept what you cannot change.
And going back to that scripture, not being conformed by the world and the renewal of your mind. So who wants to go through that? Who wants to deal with somebody that has all these issues? That's what the world tells me. You're in a relationship, someone has a problem, it's immediately, I'm out. That's the way that I've always done things. That's, again, being conformed to the world. You watch TV, and that's the easiest thing to do is to run away. But in reality, you have to change how you think of it. I love you. I love this girl. You can think about your family. It's not necessarily about your girlfriend, boyfriend. Is it your son, your daughter, your friend, whoever? I love this person. I want to help them through this. Is the way to look at it instead of being about me. Just the same as when you're doing drugs, it's about you. You're changing how you think about it. It's not about me. It's about her. How can I help her? What can I do? You're changing the way you think. And
talking about running away, I had to renew my mind on that. The simplest thing for me in any situation that was difficult for me to go through, all I knew was to bury my feelings and to run away and just try to wait until it passes. But that's part of what he helps me with, renewing my mind, making me confront my demons, making me confront all those negative thoughts and all those things that I covered with drugs, 20 plus years. Those things were coming out now. And so surrendering, meaning that you have to confront that and you have to know that you need help to get you through facing those hard times and what all the damage that you've done to people around you. You then have to face it, and that's what Jamal has helped me do, is face those things and renew how I face those things, not just running away. I have to actually work through the problem to get through it.
Yeah. Surrender is saying, stop, I can't do this anymore. God, take it. That's, you might, in your situation, you might be saying your higher power or whoever else is. But luckily, if you can surrender before something happens, it takes, a lot of the times, it takes hitting your rock bottom to get that, and that's another thing about God in general. We're so quick to blame God or to blame somebody else. It's, once you realize that everything about you is you, and to get out of yourself, there's a whole other side of things, and that's with me. So I was raised in church again, but I left church because I was about me. I'm bored. I don't see how this has anything to do with me. This is, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't blah, blah, blah. So I left, no, it was still in my soul, but in my mind, that's me fighting everything, I'm not surrendering to the situation. Then you go through this long trial, tribulation, which I would never change what I've gone through, just like I doubt you would change anything that you've gone through to get to where we are, because no matter how bad something is, there's something good comes from it, right? So she had her drugs and went through all this to now get to this point to be able to help you out or help somebody out or help somebody you know. I went through my struggle, you know, to get to where I'm at to now, like I'm talking some things I don't even want to admit, but you know, even having to sleep in my car, not knowing where I'm going to get money from, you know, it's stress, and I don't miss having so much stress. But giving it to God, and then surrendering eventually, you know, led us to where we are now.
And once you surrender, you're letting go. You're letting go of you trying to control the situation. So admitting that you need that outside help, and then you let God in, your higher power in, to then help you. Again, that's when doors open up and you're able to go through those stresses a lot easier, you know, because we're always going to have stress factors in our life. We're always going to have issues that we need to overcome. But letting it go and asking for help from your higher power, then again allows you to overcome those hurdles. And instead of having to take the long way over the mountain, you can then, you know, take the easier route. So it's very important to surrender. And you know, when I first came to NA, you know, learning to surrender, to admit that you're powerless. You know, powerless was another word that I didn't understand. You know, I remember again going to Jamal, like, what does that mean? Powerless over what? Just meaning that you know, I'm powerless. I no longer have control over my addiction. I no longer have control, you know, over my life. You know, I was no longer making the choices. It was the drug inside of me that was making the choices. So all I focused on was, you know, getting high in order to live my life. So powerless is meaning I no longer have control of my life. And so I had to learn to admit and surrender to my powerlessness.
And if you're watching this and you're a normal person, a normie, understand that that's a different person. That's not who they are. You know, they do some crazy things, but you can't think of it as you and me. You know, a normal person to a normal person. This is like the devil whispering in their ear. You know, this gravity that's pulling them, that they just can't escape. You know, you're trying to swim, something grabs your leg and is pulling you down. No matter how much you fight, you're just getting dragged down deeper and deeper. So when you think about it that way, you're again surrendering to understanding, you know, what they're going through.
I also think for normies, it's not easy for you guys to understand what an addict is going through. You know, you may not understand and think it's easy. Well, just don't do the drug. Just don't make that phone call. Just don't go in that area. It's more than that, and that's where the powerless comes in. You know, it's easy for a normie to not do drugs. They're like, I don't want to do it, so I'm not going to do it. You know, but for an addict, it literally has control over your mind, over your body, over everything. You know, all of your thoughts are all controlled by that drug. So, you know, I give praise to Jamal for actually sticking by and dealing with me, because it's hard. I can imagine how hard it is for him to understand what me, an addict, is going through, and why isn't it easy for me to just stop doing the drugs, you know. But it's more than just stop doing the drugs. Again, we have to renew our mind, you know. So once you get the drugs out of your system, that's one thing. That's just the beginning. You still have a whole other chapter of learning how to live and changing the way your mind thinks off of the drugs. So, you know, coming from a normie, it's hard to understand and to support, you know, an addict, especially when they're still in their deep, darkest days, you know, and not ready to ask for the help, you know. And thank God I got to my breaking point where I did need help, and he was there to help guide me through that. Because, you know, some relationships don't make it. And not every relationship should, you know. You can only like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And that was one of our situations. I was just ready to drink, to take that drink of water. But in most cases, you know, sometimes as a normie, you have to let go. You have to give up. You have to let them, you know, hit their rock bottom, you know. And so our timing together was just meant to be, you know, because I was ready to, that rock bottom, I was ready to drink that water, and he was ready to lead me to the water.
And let's say that you know somebody that's in a situation. First thing, you know, pray. Of course, pray. And get to a meeting. Get them to a meeting. You get to a meeting. We didn't know about meetings in the beginning. How did we even find out?
Because again, I went to the psych hospital. Well, I didn't end up checking in because I was so ashamed and, you know, went through my issues. But I ended up going to a psychiatrist. And then, well, before I can get to the psychiatrist, because it took me 30 days to get an appointment to the psychiatrist, I was referred to an addiction counselor. And that addiction counselor, he's the one that told me, he's like, get to a meeting, find an NA, find a sponsor, a woman sponsor, get the pamphlets. So my addiction counselor is the one that led us to NA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you're the normal person in this situation, you got to go with them. Go with them. See all these people that are having the same exact issue.
Yeah.
That are experiencing the same thing, that you're like, wow, you know, these people, it's not always, in my mind, thinking back to how it was, you know, you think of somebody that's on drugs, someone's alcoholic, they look different, right? They act different. But these are normal people for the most part that look like any everyday person. Mm-hmm. That just has inner demons, you know, you have your addiction to whatever it is. And that helped me so much, and I guarantee that'll help you as well if you haven't done it. Go to the meeting, get as many in as you can with them. And
you know what? Honestly, I don't recall seeing too many normies in there with the addicts. So I think we were like it was rare to see a couple. I'm not saying that they're not there, because there's actually a different meeting specifically for normies. Which is fine, you know, to get that support that you need, you know, for you guys dealing with the addicts. But I think it's important for the addict to actually be in the same room of the meetings that the addict is going through. Because there's times where I heard other stories and I wasn't able to voice that. But it was like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what that person feels like. I went through that. Different scenarios, but the feelings were there. And a lot of the times, things that they were saying, we were going to each other like, yeah, oh my gosh. And then that made him realize, oh, that's why you think like that. That's why. It made him realize it's not just me. It's not just me. You know, it's the addict in us. It's the addiction in us. And it really is a monster. It really is a devil inside of you. So again, I think it was great that he went to the meetings with me, not just for support, but to educate himself and inform, help. It just helped us as a whole. Yeah.
And isn't it strange how, so you look at a coin, two different sides, it's the same item, two different sides look completely different, right? So here we are going to these meetings, both of us learning from it, right? But there's ignorance on my end and there's ignorance on her, you know, on her end. You know, you being an addict, you going there thinking that you're alone in this. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people that are going through this as well. Not only, but also God that's with you through all this. You know, you're not alone. And here I am thinking that I have everything all figured out, but there's this whole group of people that all have this issue. You know, have these issues that are trying to better themselves. You know, mm-hmm. And again, you guys are holding yourselves to such a higher standard than what we are. It's crazy. Like I couldn't do that. Like imagine for a second the thing that you like the most, and then multiply that by 1,000, right? So, I like Cinnabon, right? So, I just don't go there, and then it's out of sight, out of mind to an extent. But if you put them in front of me, I'm gonna chow down, right? But if I take that feeling that I have for those and I multiply it 10,000, you know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, no telling what I would do. It's oversimplification of the overall issue, but just think about that for a second. You know, you're not in your you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You know, it's
You're powerless.
powerless. You know, you gotta. So that all comes back to surrendering.
Yeah, that's what that powerless feeling is when you want that donut so bad. And, you know, just like a kid, you know, like when you're teaching a kid, you know, don't touch that fire. Oh, but the fire looks so tempting. You know, I don't know what it is, but with us addicts, you know, we never learned that control. You know, we want what we wanted, and we wanted it now. And, you know, once we were able to get it that one time and know, oh, well, I can control this, so I'm going to keep going for it. You know, so it's the same thing, you know, just not having control, you know, over that temptation or the need, the want, you know.
And there's a physical, you know, issue as well. It's not just simply stop, but you're scientifically, you know, you're doing drugs. It's weeding itself in your brain. Your body needs it, so that's why, just like with the cold, in order to get rid of the cold, you know, you go and you have to take in a little bit of what's ailing you to build up a resistance to it, right? So there's a physical attraction to it as well. It's not simply just, you know, stop doing it because you're mentally to stop doing it. So if you were to take this person, put them in a room, lock them in that room, they're gonna have a physical response to it. They're gonna, you know, sweat and you know, their mood's gonna go up and down. So it's not as simple as stop doing this. You know, there's a mental level, there's a physical level, emotional, like you're attached. You know, but again, I say, imagine. Everybody has an addiction of some sort. I don't care who you are. You've been addicted to something. There's something that you just love doing above everything else. So imagine that times 100,000, you know, and imagine a world without that, or whatever the case is. That's what it's like being an addict. That's what I've learned. So going back to Romans, do not be conformed to the world. So the world is how everyone else does things, right? You can't do things the same way you've been doing. You can't do the way that you see other people doing things. People may not understand what you're going through. They may not understand what they're going through. You may not understand what they're going through, but it's about changing how you do things. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, but expecting different results, basically. You have to change that. You can't do the same thing anymore. It doesn't mean be mean to the person if you're the normie, and it doesn't mean it's going to be easy if you're the drug addict. In fact, it's going to be probably one of the hardest things you've ever done. But you can make it through it. You can do it. Like, do you even crave drugs anymore?
No, actually I don't. No. Once I gave it to God, that was the most important thing, and what I thought would never go away was like the craving, the taste in your mouth of the need of getting it, you know. But honestly, once I gave it to God, admitted I'm powerless over this, and just praying. I remember one time I just realized, like, it's not even the drugs that's my issues now. It's again now transforming my mind. You know, the taste for the drug and the craving of the drug actually just disappeared through the grace of God, you know. But yeah, so I don't crave it anymore. But then again, the next hurdle is transforming your mind. You now have to deal with all of those things you kept hidden and suppressed for all those years. You know, mine especially is my emotions, control, just thinking like a kid, you know. And so, because my mind was in the world, you know, how the world sees things. And so once, you know, you surrender and get to your higher power, you then transform your mind to a spiritual way.
Spiritual way of thinking.
A spiritual way of thinking.
Yeah, and don't, just because you're a normie, don't think that you have everything figured out, because you really don't. There's so much that I see in what they go through that maybe I didn't go through. you know. And there again, it's the opposite side of the coin. Just as she didn't feel anything when I left church, you know, I became this cold person. Not really mean, but I had no emotions whatsoever. I didn't care about anything for the most part. You know, again, me, just like her was me doing the drugs, caring about herself. Me, you know, doing whatever I wanted to do to people and not caring about what happened to them afterwards. So at the same time, it's like, I can't imagine having to go back and having to apologize to any of these people. You know, it's crazy to think about, but going back to my original thought, think about, like, take the time to think about yourself and what this really means, you being a normal person. I guarantee somewhere there's a relation, and that'll help you understand what they're going through. You have to be empathetic, sympathetic. You have to connect. You got to literally put yourself in their shoes if you really care. You know, you have to surrender to it. You have to surrender to the notion that this is what it is. This is what I can do. You know, you have to know your limitations, giving it to God. But it starts with surrendering, ultimately.
And the same goes for the addict. You have to put yourself in their shoes. You know, we get so involved in ourselves because, well, I'm going through this right now. I have to work on myself. That's the number one thing. And that's why you don't get in relationships when, you know, you're recovering, because you have a lot of healing and a lot of work to do. Our case was different, you know, but I have to stop and I have to put myself in his shoes, which has helped me. There's times where, you know, I'm going through an emotion or I'm having a breakdown or whatever, and, you know, like, I have to stop and think, like, well, okay, what if I was him, not going through this and having to deal with me, you know, and that helps put other things into perspective and helps me, you know, calm down and actually, like, learn what I needed to learn. So it goes both ways on putting yourself in each other's shoes.
Yep, two sides of a coin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us for today. Remember to keep coming back.
Yes, keep coming back. Stay clean.